Elias Vance, a 58-year-old veteran FBI agent with 30 years of service, finds himself staring down the barrel of Officer Caleb Thorne's gun in the frozen food section of Vistancia Market. FBI. "I'm reaching for my credentials," Elias announces calmly, but Caleb's finger tightens on the trigger. "All you criminals say something fancy when caught." Caleb sneers, completely unaware that across town, Police Chief David Reyes is about to receive a call that will end Caleb's career forever. Before we dive deeper into this shocking confrontation, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you believe no one should face discrimination, regardless of their position or accomplishments, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to hear stories of justice that will restore your faith in humanity. Now, let's rewind to see how a respected FBI agent ended up at gunpoint while simply buying groceries. Elias Vance hadn't planned on becoming the center of a national controversy when he stopped by Vistancia Market in Luna Verde, Arizona, that Tuesday evening. After 14 hours investigating a series of hate crimes targeting immigrant-owned businesses across the Phoenix metro area, all he wanted was ingredients for a simple dinner and perhaps a call with his Lena, who was in her final year of pre-law at Arizona State University. At 58, Elias was one of the FBI's most respected agents, specializing in civil rights violations, with commendations that filled an entire wall in his modest home office. Since losing his wife Maria to cancer 4 years ago, work and his daughter had become his entire world. His colleagues at the Bureau often remarked that Elias possessed an almost supernatural calm under pressure, a quality that had served him well throughout his 3 decades of service. That same evening, 27-year-old Officer Caleb Thorne began his patrol shift with the Luna Verde Police Department. 3 years on the force, and already the subject of 6 civilian complaints for excessive force, all quietly buried in internal affairs, Caleb represented everything Elias had spent his career fighting against. The young officer had graduated near the bottom of his police academy class, but had connections through his uncle, a city councilman, who had helped secure his position despite concerns from trainers about his temperament. What his personnel file didn't explicitly state, but fellow officers whispered about, was Caleb's particular hostility toward minorities, especially successful Hispanic men who he felt had received special treatment. He'd been denied. Luna Verde itself was a town of 20,000 residents, where racial tensions simmered beneath a veneer of southwestern hospitality. Established as a railroad stop in the 1880s, the town had a long history of conflicts between Anglo settlers and the Mexican-American families who had been there for generations, and many older residents still referred to the South Side as the barrio, despite the diverse reality of demographics. Elias, who had grown up in Luna Verde before leaving for college, and the FBI knew its complicated history intimately. He pushed his shopping cart down the frozen foods aisle, considering whether to splurge on premium ice cream when he noticed Caleb enter the store. The call had come in 15 minutes earlier from Kevin Price, a new cashier who had reported suspicious activity after seeing Elias examine several items before placing them in his cart, a normal shopping behavior that Kevin found threatening coming from a Hispanic man in a tailored suit. Elias noticed the officer watching him, but continued shopping, adding pasta sauce and garlic bread to his cart. This wasn't the first time he'd been profiled, and experience had taught him that acting naturally was his best defense. He wore civilian clothes, his FBI windbreaker folded neatly in his car, his credentials and service weapon properly holstered under his suit jacket, according to Bureau regulations. Caleb approached with his hand already resting on his holster, feet spread in an aggressive stance. "Let me see some ID," he demanded, without preamble or introduction. Elias placed his hands visibly on the shopping cart handle. "May I ask why you need my identification, officer? I'm just doing some grocery shopping." Caleb's face hardened. "We got a call about suspicious activity. You match the description." Elias knew there had been no specific description beyond his race. "I'd be happy to provide identification, but I'd like to know what suspicious activity I'm alleged to have committed." Other shoppers began to slow their carts, sensing conflict. Caleb moved his hand to unsnap his holster. "You questioning my authority? Show me some ID now or things are gonna get complicated." Elias thought of all the similar moments throughout his life, even as he rose through FBI ranks, how the uniform he wore mattered less than the skin he lived in. He thought of the conversations he'd had with Lena about how to interact with police, the same conversations his father had with him decades earlier. "Officer, I'm going to reach for my wallet very slowly," Elias said, his voice deliberately calm, as Caleb's hand now fully gripped his weapon. The young officer's face twisted with anger at Elias's composure, at his articulate speech, at his refusal to be intimidated. "Make any sudden moves, and I promise you'll regret it," Caleb warned as other shoppers abandoned their carts and moved away, a mother quickly pulling her curious child behind a display of breakfast cereals. Elias's fingers had barely touched his inside jacket pocket when Caleb drew his weapon. "Hands where I can see them now. On your knees, hands behind your head," Caleb shouted, his service weapon aimed directly at Elias's chest as frightened shoppers scattered in all directions. With practiced caution, Elias slowly complied, decades of FBI training overriding his justified indignation. "Officer, I'm a federal agent with FBI. If you allow me to reach inside my jacket, I can show you my credentials." His voice remained steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. Caleb sneered, moving closer with his weapon still raised. "Yeah, right. You people always come up with something. FBI CIA, on a secret mission from Area 51. Get down on the ground now." The racial undertone was unmistakable. Elias carefully lowered himself to the cold linoleum floor of the frozen food section, maintaining eye contact with Caleb while calculating his options. Shoppers had formed a loose semicircle at a safe distance, several holding phones aloft to record the confrontation. "That's right. Take him down," shouted an older white man from behind a display of orange juice. "Probably trying to rob the place." Elias could see others in the crowd looking uncomfortable, exchanging concerned glances, but no one intervened. Caleb roughly grabbed Elias's arms, wrenching them behind his back with unnecessary force. "I am reaching for my credentials in my left inside jacket pocket," Elias stated clearly for the benefit of the recording phones. "I am an FBI special agent currently conducting an investigation in this jurisdiction." Caleb leaned in close, his breath hot against Elias's ear. "Touch that pocket and I'll put a bullet in you and say you went for a weapon." The store manager, Sofia Rossi, a second-generation Italian-American woman in her 40s, pushed through the gathered onlookers. "Officer, is this really necessary? This gentleman has been shopping here regularly for weeks. He's never caused any problems." Caleb barely glanced at her. "Ma'am, back away now. This is police business. Interfere, and you'll be arrested for obstructing justice." Sophia hesitated, then stepped back, pulling out her own phone to record the situation. Elias noticed that Caleb's body camera, which should have been displaying a red recording light, remained suspiciously dark. "Your body camera appears to be off, officer," he observed calmly. "Department policy requires it to be activated during all civilian encounters." Caleb's face flushed with anger. He keyed his shoulder radio, turning slightly away from the growing crowd. "Dispatch, this is Officer Thorne. I've got an armed suspect at Vistancia Market claiming to be FBI, requesting immediate backup." He emphasized claiming, making his disbelief clear. Elias mentally reviewed his options. Physical resistance would only escalate the situation and potentially endanger bystanders. As a federal agent, he had certain protections, but only if he survived this encounter. He thought of Lena, of the promise he'd made to his late wife to be there for their daughter's graduation next spring. Maintaining his composure was his best strategy, even as his shoulder joints screamed from the unnatural position. Caleb seemed increasingly agitated by Elias's calm demeanor, mistaking professional training for disrespect. "You think you're better than me, don't you?" he hissed, tightening his grip on Elias's arms. "Got your fancy suit and your made-up badge." Elias measured his words carefully. "Officer Thorne, I'd like to inform you that Police Chief David Reyes is a personal friend of mine. Perhaps you'd like to contact him directly about this situation." Caleb laughed derisively loud enough for the onlookers to hear. "Oh, now you know the chief personally. That's convenient. Next, you'll tell me the mayor's your cousin and the governor's your golfing buddy." He leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper meant only for Elias's ears. "No more fairy tales, boy." The racial slur slipped out just quietly enough that the crowd couldn't hear it, but Elias recognized the hatred behind it immediately. With practiced efficiency, Caleb roughly handcuffed Elias, the metal biting into his wrists. "You have the right to remain silent." He began reciting while Elias noted with professional detachment that he had yet to be told what crime he was supposedly being arrested for. As Caleb continued the Miranda warning, Elias caught the eye of a young Hispanic woman in the crowd who was recording everything. He gave her a subtle nod, hoping she understood what he couldn't say aloud, that he would need witnesses to what was happening here. "Do you believe there are still people who abuse their authority based on racial prejudice?" Comment number 1. If you think police officers should be held accountable for their actions, regardless of who they target. Like this video if you agree that racism has no place in law enforcement. Subscribe to see more stories of justice prevailing against all odds. Now, what connection could possibly exist between an FBI agent and a small-town police chief that might change everything? Luna Verde, Arizona, summer of 1985. Two boys race their bicycles down Agave Street, laughing as they dodge potholes and parked cars. Elias Vance, 8 years old, with skinned knees and a gap-toothed smile, pedals furiously to keep up with his best friend, David "Davy" Reyes. They were an unlikely pair in a town with a sharp divide between its Anglo and Hispanic populations. Elias, the son of the town's only Latino doctor, and Davy, whose mother cleaned houses for wealthy white families while raising 5 children alone. "Last one to the arroyo buys the sodas," Davy shouted over his shoulder, standing up on his pedals for extra speed. Those carefree summer days defined their childhood, but as they grew older, the world increasingly reminded them of their differences. By middle school, they'd learned to navigate the racial tensions that permeated their town. When 3 white teenagers cornered Elias behind the gymnasium, it was Davy who arrived with a baseball bat and enough righteous fury to send them running. 2 years later, when Davy's mother couldn't afford his basketball team fees, Elias's father quietly paid them without being asked. Their friendship survived high school, despite being sorted into different social circles. Elias excelled academically, earning a scholarship to the University of Arizona, while Davy's natural leadership made him captain of both the football and debate teams. The night before Elias left for college, they sat on the banks of the same arroyo where they'd spent countless summer days. "I'm going to become an FBI agent," Elias announced, skipping stones across the dry creek bed. "Someone needs to make sure the law protects everyone equally." Davy nodded thoughtfully. "I'm staying here, going to join the police academy after community college." When Elias looked surprised, Davy explained, "If we want things to change, someone has to change them from the inside." Their paths diverged, but never truly separated. Elias sent postcards from Quantico during his FBI training. Davy wrote letters about his struggles as one of only 2 Hispanic officers in the Luna Verde Police Department. When Elias investigated civil rights violations across the Southwest, Davy fed him information about suspicious cases that needed federal attention. 20 years after leaving Luna Verde, Elias returned for Davy's ceremony when he made history as the town's first Hispanic police chief. David Reyes had spent 10 years transforming the department, implementing strict body camera policies, cultural sensitivity training, and a civilian review board. He'd fired 7 officers for misconduct and rebuilt community trust through transparency and accountability. Now handcuffed on the floor of Vistancia Market, Elias Vance made a decision. He caught the eye of a young woman who hadn't joined the chorus of racist comments from some onlookers. "Miss," he called out, his voice steady and dignified despite his position. "Would you please call Police Chief David Reyes? Tell him Elias Vance needs him at Vistancia Market immediately." Caleb snorted derisively. "Yeah, call the chief. I'm sure he'll drop everything because some random guy claims to know him." But the young woman nodded, stepping away to make the call. Caleb shifted nervously as more people gathered. The crowd had grown to nearly 30 shoppers, with opinions clearly divided. Some muttered about police harassment, while others loudly proclaimed that Caleb was just doing his job. Elias remained silent, conserving his energy, and watching Caleb grow increasingly uncomfortable under the scrutiny of so many phone cameras. 2 patrol cars arrived with lights flashing, and a pair of rookie officers hurried into the store. Officer Diaz and Officer Chen looked barely out of the academy, their uniforms still stiff with newness. "What's the situation?" Diaz asked, taking in the scene with obvious confusion. Caleb pulled them aside, speaking rapidly. Suspicious male refused to identify himself, made threatening movements, and claimed to be FBI. "I've got him secured, but he might have accomplices." Elias watched the rookies' faces as they processed this obvious fabrication. Officer Chen glanced at him with uncertainty, noting his calm demeanor and professional appearance. "Sir, do you have identification?" she asked, approaching cautiously. "Left inside jacket pocket." Elias replied evenly. "I'm Special Agent Elias Vance, FBI, Domestic Terrorism Task Force Civil Rights Division." Caleb stepped forward. "Hey, I already checked him for weapons. There's nothing there." But Officer Chen had already reached carefully into Elias's jacket, withdrawing a leather credential wallet. She flipped it open, eyes widening at the gold FBI shield and identification card. She showed it silently to Officer Diaz, whose expression shifted from skepticism to alarm. Thorne Diaz said quietly, "We need to talk, now." Before they could confer further, the unmistakable sound of a police siren cut through the murmuring crowd. A cruiser with chief's insignia pulled into the parking lot, lights flashing, but sirens stopping abruptly. Caleb's face paled as he recognized the vehicle. "Who called the chief?" he demanded, looking accusingly at the rookies. "I did," said the young woman who had stepped away earlier. "And I told him exactly what's happening here." The automatic doors slid open, and Police Chief David Reyes strode in his imposing 6'3" frame, filling the entrance. His eyes scanned the scene quickly, professionally, before locking onto Elias's face. For a brief moment, beneath the professional mask, recognition flashed between 2 old friends who had once promised to change the world together. Chief David Reyes moved through the parting crowd with the quiet authority of a man who commanded respect, not through intimidation, but through integrity earned over decades of service. At 56, his close-cropped hair had gone silver at the temples, adding gravitas to his already commanding presence. Several shoppers whispered in surprise, unaccustomed to seeing a Hispanic police chief in a town where racial progress often seemed to move at a glacial pace. Caleb Thorne straightened his posture, but couldn't hide the flicker of uncertainty that crossed his face. "Chief," he began, voice higher than normal. "I was responding to a suspicious person call when this individual became combative, and David held up one hand, silencing Caleb mid-sentence. He knelt beside Elias, meeting his old friend's eyes. "Special Agent Vance," he said formally, though his voice carried a warmth that belied the professional address. "Seems you're having some trouble grocery shopping in my town." Elias maintained his dignity despite the handcuffs and uncomfortable position. "Just a misunderstanding, Chief Reyes. Officer Thorne here seems unconvinced of my credentials." David stood, turning to Caleb with an expression that had frozen many a subordinate in place. "Remove those handcuffs, officer, immediately." Caleb didn't move. "Sir, with all due respect, this suspect was—" "That wasn't a suggestion, Thorne. It was an order." David's voice remained level, but carried an unmistakable steel. "Unless you'd like to explain to the FBI field office why you've detained a senior federal agent without cause." Caleb hesitated, a muscle working in his jaw, as he visibly struggled with taking orders from a Hispanic superior. The watching crowd had gone completely silent, phones still recording what had transformed from a routine arrest into something far more dramatic. After what seemed an eternity, but was merely seconds, Caleb reluctantly produced the handcuff key and unlocked the restraints. Elias rose smoothly to his feet, straightening his suit jacket with the dignity of a man accustomed to maintaining composure under extreme circumstances. "Thank you, Chief Reyes," he said, rubbing his wrists where the cuffs had left angry red marks. David took Elias's FBI credentials from Officer Chen, examining them briefly before returning them with a respectful nod. "Please accept my apologies for this incident, Special Agent Vance." His formal tone couldn't quite mask the personal concern underneath. The two men shared a brief look that contained 35 years of friendship, the weight of shared childhood memories and mutual understanding of what it meant to be Hispanic men in positions of authority. "Would you mind if I reviewed what happened here?" David asked, turning to the bystanders. Several people immediately stepped forward, offering their phone recordings. Sophia Rossi, the store manager, approached with her own device. "I have the security camera footage as well, Chief Reyes. It covers the entire incident from when Officer Thorne entered the store." David thanked her, then gestured to Officers Diaz and Chen. "Please collect witness statements and all available video evidence." As the rookies moved through the crowd, David pulled Caleb aside their conversation, just quiet enough that onlookers couldn't hear the specific words, but David's expression left no doubt about the seriousness of the discussion. Several uniformed officers who had arrived as backup stood awkwardly nearby, exchanging glances as their chief confronted one of their own. Officer Michaels, a 20-year veteran, leaned toward his partner. "Thorne's done it this time. That's the third complaint this month, and now he's messed with the FBI. The chief's been looking for a reason to cut him loose since that incident with the Garcia family last summer." His partner nodded. "Yeah, and he turned his body cam off again. Reyes implemented that policy himself. He's gonna be furious." Caleb's face flushed deep red as David continued speaking, his finger occasionally jabbing toward Elias or the watching crowd. When David finished, he turned away, but Caleb wasn't done. He muttered something under his breath, thinking his chief out of earshot, but David stopped mid-stride, his back stiffening. He turned slowly, his expression now dangerously calm. "What was that, Officer Thorne?" Caleb swallowed hard, realizing his mistake. "Nothing, sir." "No, please repeat what you just said. I want to make sure everyone heard you." Caleb remained silent, eyes darting to the watching crowd, many still recording. "I thought so," David said, his voice carrying clearly through the now silent store. "Officer Thorne, your body camera is conveniently deactivated. You've detained a federal officer without cause. You've ignored multiple witnesses attesting to your misconduct, And now you've used racially offensive language about both myself and Special Agent Vance." He extended his hand. "Your service weapon and badge, please." Caleb took an involuntary step backward. "Chief, you can't. I absolutely can. You're suspended pending full investigation effective immediately. Your weapon and badge, Officer Thorne now." The store had gone completely silent. Even the overhead music seemed to have paused for this moment of reckoning. With trembling fingers and fury in his eyes, Caleb unholstered his weapon carefully, removing the magazine before placing it in his chief's outstretched hand. Then, with visible reluctance, he unpinned his badge from his uniform. David accepted both items with formal professionalism. "Officer Diaz will escort you to the station to complete the necessary paperwork. You'll be contacted regarding the disciplinary hearing." As Caleb was led away, the tension in the store broke. Several shoppers applauded spontaneously, while others merely watched in stunned silence. David turned to Elias, dropping the formal facade. "It's been too long. Old friend, though I wish our reunion had happened under different circumstances." By midnight, video of the confrontation at Vistancia Market had been viewed over 2 million times across multiple social media platforms. Hashtags like shopping, While Brown, and #Badge of Injustice trended nationally, with celebrities and politicians weighing in on the incident. The local Luna Verde Sun's website crashed from unprecedented traffic after they published the store's security footage showing the entire encounter from multiple angles. CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News all led their morning broadcasts with different framings of the same event. An FBI agent racially profiled while shopping announced one network. Police officer suspended for doing his job countered another. Elias Vance awoke in his childhood bedroom, now converted to a guest room in David Reyes's comfortable adobe home on Juniper Lane. He'd declined to stay in a hotel, preferring the security and privacy of his old friend's residence, as reporters began gathering outside his temporary FBI office in Luna Verde. He scrolled through dozens of missed calls and messages on his secure phone, including 3 from the FBI director himself and 1 from the Attorney General. His daughter Lena had sent 17 increasingly panicked texts after seeing her father's face on national news, only calming down after they'd spoken for an hour the previous night. Elias wasn't used to being the story. For 30 years, he'd worked behind the scenes building cases against white supremacist groups, corrupt officials, and civil rights violators. Now his face appeared on every news channel, his personnel file scrutinized by pundits who alternately portrayed him as an American hero or suggested he must have done something to provoke Officer Thorne's response. Downstairs, he found David at the kitchen table, still in his bathrobe, reviewing documents while his wife Elena prepared breakfast. As Elias settled at the table, David pushed a tablet toward him, displaying the official incident report. "He lied about everything," David said grimly. Elias nodded, unsurprised, but still disturbed. "You've got a systemic problem, Davy. I know. I've been cleaning house since I took over, but some rot goes deeper than I realized." He rubbed his eyes wearily. "The mayor's office has called 4 times this morning. They're worried about lawsuits, department reputation, tourism impact." Elena placed plates of huevos rancheros before both men. "The mayor should be worried about justice, not public relations," she said firmly. If David hadn't arrived when he did. She didn't finish the thought. They all knew how differently yesterday's incident might have ended. Elias's secure phone rang with a DC area code. "Vance," he answered, listening intently to his superior at the bureau. "Yes, sir. I understand. Yes, I can be available for that." He ended the call with a sigh. "FBI Internal Affairs is sending a team. Standard procedure when an agent is involved in a police incident. They're also launching their own investigation into potential civil rights violations by Officer Thorne and possibly others in the department. David nodded solemnly. I'll cooperate fully. This department needs cleaning out, and if it takes federal oversight to do it, so be it. After breakfast, Elias and David met privately in David's home office, a space lined with photographs chronicling David's rise through police ranks, alongside family portraits and community awards. We need to talk strategy, David said, closing the door. This isn't just about one bad officer. I've suspected for years that there's a faction within the department working against my reforms, protecting officers like Thorne, targeting certain neighborhoods for excessive enforcement. Elias leaned forward. His professional interest piqued. You think Thorne has protection inside the department and possibly at City Hall? The previous chief, Frank Corrigan, still has considerable influence. Several city council members were vocal opponents when I implemented the body camera program and civilian review board. Elias considered this information. My current assignment involves investigating a pattern of hate crimes against immigrant-owned businesses across the Phoenix metro area. 3 arson cases, numerous vandalism incidents, all with similar racial slurs left at the scenes. David's eyes widened slightly. We've had 2 suspicious fires at Hispanic-owned businesses in Luna Verde in the past 6 months. Both ruled accidental by our fire investigator, who appointed that investigator Corrigan before he retired. The 2 men exchanged knowing glances, decades of friendship allowing them to communicate volumes without words. I'll need to extend my stay in Luna Verde, Elias said finally. I'll tell the Bureau I'm following a lead connecting my current case to local incidents. You can use my guest room as long as needed. David hesitated. But Elias, be careful. If what we suspect is true, you've just put yourself in the crosshairs of some dangerous people. Later that afternoon, as news vans lined the street outside the Luna Verde police station, Elias and David emerged to give a brief statement. Reporters shouted questions from behind hastily erected barriers. Chief Reyes, will Officer Thorne be permanently removed from duty? Agent Vance, do you plan to sue the department? Is this incident being investigated as a hate crime? David raised his hands for quiet. The Luna Verde Police Department is conducting a thorough investigation into yesterday's incident. Officer Thorne has been suspended pending the outcome of that investigation and a formal disciplinary hearing. We are cooperating fully with the FBI, which has opened its own inquiry. He turned to Elias, who stepped forward with the practiced composure of a veteran federal agent. I came to Luna Verde as part of an ongoing FBI investigation into civil rights violations. Yesterday's incident, while unfortunate, will not deter me from that mission. I have full confidence in Chief Reyes's commitment to ensuring justice and accountability within his department. As they fielded a few carefully selected questions, neither man mentioned their growing suspicion that what had happened at Vistancia Market might be connected to something far more sinister within Luna Verde's power structure. Across town, Caleb Thorne sat in the darkened living room of his apartment, watching the press conference on television while scrolling through messages of support from sympathetic colleagues and right-wing police advocacy groups. His phone rang with a number he recognized. "Hello?" he answered cautiously. "Thorne, it's Corrigan. Keep your mouth shut and lay low. We're working on damage control. Remember, you've got friends in this town who understand you were just doing your job." Caleb leaned back, a small smile forming. "Yes, sir. I appreciate the support." After hanging up, he opened his laptop and logged into a private forum where several usernames he recognized as fellow officers were already discussing strategies to discredit both Reyes and Vance. "This isn't over," he muttered to himself, typing a message to the group. "Not by a long shot. What would you do if you discovered corruption within the very system meant to protect you?" Comment number 1. If you believe exposing the truth is worth the risk, even when powerful people want to silence you. Like this video if you think friendship can be a powerful weapon against injustice. Subscribe to follow more stories where ordinary people stand up against extraordinary odds. Now, just how deep does this conspiracy go? And who else might be involved? Elias Vance sat in his temporary office at the Luna Verde FBI satellite location, reviewing personnel files Chief Reyes had provided on officers with connections to Caleb Thorne. He'd officially requested a 2-week extension on his hate crimes investigation, citing potential links to Luna Verde cases. His superiors, already concerned about the public relations implications of having an agent racially profiled, readily approved. The wall behind him displayed photographs of 6 businesses targeted in apparent hate crimes across Arizona, including 2 in Luna Verde that local authorities had dismissed as accidental fires. Red string connected similar elements. Timing methods, spray-painted slurs, lack of forced entry. Something about the pattern nagged at him, suggesting inside knowledge or possibly official involvement. His phone buzzed with a text from David. Sophia Rossi receiving threats. Store security cameras show police cruiser driving by her house repeatedly last night. Elias frowned. The store manager had been one of the few people willing to intervene during his confrontation with Caleb Thorne. Now she was being intimidated for speaking out. He added her name to his whiteboard under witnesses requiring protection. His concentration was broken by a knock at the door. "Come in," he called reflexively, checking that his service weapon was within reach. The door opened to reveal Lena Vance, her expression a mixture of concern and determination. At 22, she strongly resembled her mother with the same analytical mind that had made Elias fall in love with Maria decades earlier. "Dad," she said, dropping her backpack and embracing him tightly. "I caught the first flight I could get." Elias returned the hug surprised, but relieved to see his daughter. "Lena, you should be in class. Your finals are next week." She pulled back, fixing him with a look that brooked no argument. "My father was held at gunpoint by a racist cop. I think my professors will understand." She gestured to the case board. "Besides, I've helped you organize case files since I was 12. You need me." Elias couldn't argue with that logic. Lena had grown up watching him build cases, developing an instinctive understanding of investigation techniques that had only sharpened during her pre-law studies. "All right," he conceded. "But you stay away from anything dangerous, understood? You're here as my administrative assistant, nothing more." Lena rolled her eyes but agreed immediately, turning her attention to the files scattered across his desk. "So what's the connection between these hate crimes and Officer Thorne?" While Elias brought his daughter up to speed across town, David Reyes faced a crisis of his own. The brick had crashed through his kitchen window at 3 a.m., narrowly missing Elena as she made her way to the bathroom. Attached was a note with 2 words: "Race traitor." Now, as crime scene technicians photographed the evidence, David received a call from Deputy Chief Martinez. "Chief, someone accessed the personnel file server last night. All disciplinary records for Officer Thorne have been deleted from the system." David's blood ran cold. "What about backups also wiped? Whoever did this knew our network architecture." David thanked her and ended the call, turning to the officer supervising the crime scene. "Patterson, I want a detail on my house around the clock, but keep it quiet. Use only officers you personally trust." Officer Patterson nodded gravely. "Yes, sir. And Chief, a lot of us support what you're doing. Not everyone's on Thorne's side." By midday, Elias and David met at a diner 10 miles outside Luna Verde to compare notes, bringing Lena along. The vintage roadside restaurant with vinyl booths and a jukebox provided both anonymity and limited entry points that Elias could monitor. Someone's trying to erase Thorne's record. David explained after they ordered. "They're also sending clear messages to witnesses. Sophia Rossi isn't the only one. 2 other shoppers who provided statements have reported suspicious vehicles outside their homes." Elias nodded grimly. "This goes beyond one officer with racial bias. Someone's protecting Thorne, which means he's connected to something bigger." Lena, who had been quietly listening while reviewing case notes, suddenly looked up. "Dad, did you notice that all the hate crime targets were either potential witnesses in previous misconduct cases or had filed complaints against Luna Verde officers?" Elias and David both turned to her with surprised expressions. "What?" she said defensively. "I cross-referenced the business owners with the complaint records Chief Reyes sent over. Every single one had some interaction with the police department that went nowhere under the previous administration." Elias quickly verified her observation pride, momentarily overriding his concern. "She's right. This could be systematic intimidation or retaliation against civilians who challenged police authority." David's phone buzzed with a text message. His expression darkened as he read it. "The mayor's called an emergency closed session of the city council for tonight. My sources say they're discussing whether to place me on administrative leave pending review of my handling of department personnel matters." Elias understood the implications immediately. "They're moving to regain control of the investigation. If they remove you, who takes over as acting Chief Deputy Chief Martinez normally? But she's on vacation this week, which means it would default to Captain Riggs." Riggs Elias repeated former partner to ex-Chief Corrigan. David nodded grimly. "And godfather to Caleb Thorne." The pieces were falling into place, revealing a picture more disturbing than any of them had anticipated. That evening, as David prepared for the council meeting, Elias and Lena worked late at the satellite office, compiling evidence of what increasingly appeared to be a coordinated effort to cover up police misconduct and possibly direct involvement in hate crimes. Lena had connected with a courthouse clerk she'd befriended during her summer internship, who provided access to sealed records showing financial connections between former Chief Corrigan Mayor Thompson and several business entities that had benefited from city contracts. As Elias added these new connections to his caseboard, the lights in the small office suddenly went out. "Power outage?" Lena asked, reaching for her phone's flashlight. Elias's hand went instinctively to his weapon. "Stay down," he ordered quietly, moving to the window. Outside, he could see other buildings still had electricity. This outage was isolated to their building. The sound of glass breaking came from the rear entrance. Elias drew his service weapon, positioning himself between the door and his daughter. "Call David," he whispered. "Tell him we need backup at the satellite office, then call 911. As Lena made the calls, Elias heard multiple footsteps in the darkened hallway. This was no random break-in. Someone had deliberately cut power to the building and knew exactly where to find them. Elias calculated his options, knowing that whoever was coming had likely planned for an armed FBI agent. But he doubted they'd expected Lena to be present, which might give him a tactical advantage. "When I engage them," he whispered to his daughter, "slip out through the side door and run for the car. Drive straight to David's house. Do not stop for anyone." Before Lena could protest, the office door burst open and 2 masked figures rushed in with tactical flashlights and weapons drawn. "FBI, drop your weapons," Elias shouted, taking cover behind a filing cabinet. Instead of complying, the intruders opened fire. The first bullet embedded itself in the filing cabinet, inches from Elias's head, sending metal splinters flying. With practiced precision, he returned fire, forcing the attackers to seek cover. "Go now!" he shouted to Lena, who darted toward the side exit as instructed. One intruder swung his weapon toward the movement, but Elias's well-placed shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him backward with a howl of pain. The second attacker unleashed a barrage of bullets, forcing Elias to duck behind a desk as office equipment shattered around him. Years of field experience took over as he calculated angles, distances, and the diminishing ammunition in his standard-issue Glock. He heard the distinctive sound of a magazine being ejected, giving him a split-second advantage. Rising from cover, he fired twice, catching the second attacker in the leg. Both men retreated, dragging themselves down the hallway and out the rear exit. By the time police sirens wailed in the distance, they had disappeared into a waiting vehicle. Elias secured the area, then called Lena. "I'm fine," she assured him, her voice remarkably steady. "I'm with Elena at your house. Chief Reyes is on his way to you with officers he trusts." The attack marked a dangerous escalation. What had begun as racial profiling at a grocery store had exposed a network of corruption reaching into the highest levels of Luna Verde's government and police force. Within hours, the FBI had dispatched a tactical team to secure the satellite office and protect Elias. Director Collins himself called to check on one of the Bureau's most respected agents. "I'm assigning Assistant Director Levinson and a full investigative team. We're treating this as an attack on the federal government." By morning, Luna Verde found itself at the center of a national story with a new dimension. "FBI agent targeted after exposing police corruption," read the headlines. While Elias worked with the arriving federal team, Caleb Thorne launched his counteroffensive from paid administrative leave. He appeared on American Morning, a conservative news program, portraying himself as a victim of political correctness. "I was just doing my job, responding to a suspicious person call." He insisted, dressed in a crisp button-down rather than his uniform. "I had no way of knowing he was FBI. When someone reaches into their jacket after acting confrontational, I have to protect myself and the public." The sympathetic host nodded. "And now Chief Reyes, who has a personal relationship with this agent, has suspended you without due process." Caleb adopted an expression of wounded innocence. "It seems like my career is being sacrificed to appease political pressure. I became a police officer to protect and serve everyone regardless of race." The interview sparked outrage across social media, with police unions from other jurisdictions releasing statements supporting Thorne and condemning what they called a rush to judgment. David Reyes arrived at his office to find protesters from both sides gathered outside police headquarters. Signs reading, "Stand with Thorne," competed with others demanding justice for Vance. Inside the department had fractured along similar lines. Some officers wore small blue pins, a silent symbol of solidarity with Caleb Thorne. Others made a point of expressing support for their chief's actions. As David settled behind his desk, his secretary delivered troubling news. "Sir Mayor Thompson has called an emergency press conference for noon. The rumors say he's going to announce an independent investigation into your handling of the Thorne suspension." Before David could respond, his computer pinged with an urgent email. Someone had anonymously sent him a file containing what appeared to be forged performance reviews and altered incident reports designed to damage Elias's credibility. The documents had already been leaked to several news outlets. Meanwhile, Elias's daughter Lena had returned to the secured FBI command post established at a federal building outside Luna Verde. Despite her father's concerns, she refused to return to Washington. "I'm staying," she insisted. "Besides, I made contact with someone who might help us." That someone was Jessica Moore, a dispatcher at the Luna Verde Police Department, who had dated Caleb Thorne briefly before ending the relationship after witnessing his volatile temper. While romantic involvement had clouded her judgment, initially Jessica had grown increasingly troubled by Caleb's racist comments and the support he received from certain officers, despite documented misconduct. He bragged about having protection from the top. Jessica told Lena during their clandestine meeting at a coffee shop Said Chief Reyes was on borrowed time because the old guard wouldn't tolerate a Hispanic man running things for long. Jessica nervously slid a USB drive across the table. This is from the dispatch system. It shows patrol patterns for the past 6 months. Notice how certain officers, including Caleb, were consistently assigned to the predominantly Hispanic South Side, despite numerous complaints. Lena thanked her, recognizing the risk Jessica took by providing this information. "Why are you doing this?" Jessica stared into her coffee. "My brother's half Hispanic, different fathers. I've watched how differently people treat us our whole lives. When I heard Caleb talk about cleaning up certain neighborhoods, I knew exactly what he meant. As threats mounted against witnesses and evidence, Elias's FBI colleagues arrived in force. Special Agent Valencia Torres, a digital forensics specialist, established secure communications. Special Agent Derek Wong began interviewing witnesses under federal protection. The technical team discovered sophisticated deletion attempts on the police department's servers, but backups preserved critical evidence of tampering. At the Luna Verde Municipal Building, Caleb Thorne entered through a side door for his scheduled internal affairs interview. Unknown to him, FBI agents had installed surveillance equipment with David's authorization. As Caleb waited alone in the interview room, he made a critical mistake. Believing himself unobserved, he used his phone to access and delete incriminating messages. The FBI team captured every keystroke, documenting his destruction of evidence in real time. That evening, as tensions in Luna Verde reached a breaking point, a local radio station broadcast an explosive recording. The audio apparently captured during a private gathering of officers featured Caleb Thorne and several colleagues discussing targeting Hispanic residents for minor infractions. "Keep the pressure on that neighborhood," an identified voice instructed. "Make them understand this is still our town, no matter who's sitting in the chief's office." The recording included racial slurs and explicit discussions of fabricating probable cause for traffic stops and searches. Public reaction was swift and furious. Mayor Thompson, previously supportive of Thorne, issued a carefully worded statement distancing himself from any discriminatory police practices. Former Chief Corrigan canceled scheduled media appearances. David Reyes, recognizing the pivotal moment, called an emergency town hall meeting for the following evening. "It's time for this community to face its truth," he told Elias as they prepared their strategy. "We've built enough evidence to expose not just Thorne, but the entire corrupt system." Elias nodded in agreement. "The Bureau is ready to present our findings, including the financial connections between Corrigan, the mayor, and those city contracts." Lena, who had been reviewing documents with Jessica's help, looked up from her laptop. "And I've found the connection between the hate crimes and the department. 3 officers, including Thorne, were moonlighting as security for businesses that later received city contracts after Hispanic-owned competitors were vandalized or burned. As they prepared for the public confrontation that would shake Luna Verde to its core, Elias received a warning from an FBI surveillance team. Thorne and several officers just entered the Bluebird bar. "They're meeting with Corrigan and someone from the mayor's office. Looks like they're planning something for tomorrow's town hall." David checked his secure phone, reviewing security arrangements. "Let them plan. For the first time, we're one step ahead of them." The night before the town hall, as Luna Verde held its collective breath, Elias stood at David's kitchen window, looking out at the quiet street. "Remember when we used to think changing the world would be simple?" he asked his oldest friend. David joined him, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "Nothing worth doing is ever simple." He passed a cup to Elias. "But we're still here, still fighting. That counts for something." Elias accepted the coffee with a tired smile. "Tomorrow we finish what began in that grocery store." What neither man could predict was exactly how explosive the town hall would become, or how dramatically it would transform not just their lives, but the future of Luna Verde itself. The Luna Verde Community Center hummed with tension as hundreds of residents filed in, filling every seat and lining the walls. News vans from national networks crowded the parking lot, satellite dishes raised to broadcast the proceedings live across the country. Armed FBI agents and state police officers maintained a visible security presence, their faces impassive as they scanned the crowd for potential threats. At the front of the room, a long table had been set up with microphones for Chief David Reyes, FBI Special Agent Elias Vance, State Attorney General Catherine Pearson, and County Prosecutor Michael Dawson. To the side sat Caleb Thorne, with his attorney, a high-priced lawyer from Phoenix, who specialized in defending police officers accused of misconduct. Former Chief Frank Corrigan occupied a front-row seat, surrounded by supporters wearing small blue pins. Mayor Thompson had initially claimed a scheduling conflict, but changed his mind when informed his absence would be noted in the federal investigation report. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation as David Reyes approached the microphone at exactly 7 p.m. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his deep voice carrying clearly through the packed hall. "What happened to Special Agent Vance at Vistancia Market last week has forced our community to confront uncomfortable truths about policing in Luna Verde. Tonight is about transparency, accountability, and justice." He outlined the evening's agenda presentation of evidence testimony from affected community members and announcements regarding next steps. Caleb Thorne's attorney immediately objected. "My client is entitled to due process through proper channels, not a public lynching disguised as a town hall." The racially charged term sent murmurs through the crowd. David remained unflappable. "Counselor, this is not a trial. Your client will have ample opportunity to address the evidence presented. But the people of Luna Verde deserve to know what's been happening in their police department." Elias Vance stepped forward next, his presence commanding immediate respect. The professional FBI agent was a stark contrast to the man Luna Verde had seen handcuffed on a grocery store floor days earlier. "My team has conducted a thorough investigation into not only the incident involving Officer Thorne, but a pattern of potentially criminal behavior within the Luna Verde Police Department spanning several years." With methodical precision, Elias presented evidence from department records, witness statements, and financial documents. A large screen displayed timeline charts connecting incidents of police misconduct with specific officers, all protected by the previous administration. Our analysis shows that between 2020 and 2024, complaints filed by Hispanic residents were 87% more likely to be dismissed without investigation compared to those filed by white residents. The evidence grew more damning as Elias revealed financial connections between former Chief Corrigan Mayor Thompson and developers who benefited from properties that changed hands after Hispanic-owned businesses were targeted in apparent hate crimes. In each case, officers connected to Caleb Thorne's circle were the first responders who ruled these incidents as accidents or random vandalism, despite clear evidence suggesting otherwise. Former Chief Corrigan shifted uncomfortably in his seat as bank records appeared on screen showing suspicious deposits coinciding with key property transactions. Mayor Thompson stared straight ahead, his face a rigid mask. As the presentation continued, Caleb Thorne's confident smirk gradually faded. His attorney scribbled notes frantically, occasionally whispering in his client's ear. Following the FBI presentation, David returned to the microphone. "We've also discovered evidence of systematic targeting of Hispanic neighborhoods for excessive enforcement of minor infractions." He played the damning audio recording that had surfaced the previous day, now enhanced by FBI audio technicians, to clearly identify each speaker. Caleb Thorne's voice was unmistakable as he discussed keeping those people in line. The recording ended with former Chief Corrigan instructing officers to disable body cameras during certain encounters. A stunned silence fell over the room, broken only when a woman stood up from her seat. "That's the same voice," she said clearly. "The officer who tore my car apart looking for drugs when I was driving home from church. When I filed a complaint, they said there was no record of the stop." Her statement opened the floodgates. One by one, residents came forward to share experiences of harassment, intimidation, and discrimination at the hands of Luna Verde police officers. A Hispanic business owner described repeated code violations that mysteriously appeared after he refused to sell his property to a developer connected to Mayor Thompson. A high school teacher recounted how her honors students were routinely stopped and searched while walking home from study sessions. Each testimony built upon the previous one, creating a devastating portrait of systematic abuse of power. Attorney General Pearson approached the microphone next. Based on the evidence presented by the FBI and testimony from community members, my office is launching a formal investigation into civil rights violations by the Luna Verde Police Department. This investigation will examine potential criminal charges against specific officers and civilian officials involved in these incidents. Caleb Thorne's attorney jumped to his feet. "This is outrageous. My client is being railroaded without due process." David remained composed. "Your client turned off his body camera before confronting a federal agent without cause, then fabricated details in his official report. Those actions alone warrant termination under department policies I implemented 3 years ago. Policies that Officer Thorne acknowledged and signed." The attorney continued objecting as Caleb suddenly stood up, his face contorted with anger. "This is all because of him," he shouted, pointing at Elias. "You're all taking his word because he has some fancy badge and knows the chief I was protecting this community from what Officer Thorne." Elias asked calmly, "From a man buying groceries, or from the reality that Hispanic professionals like Chief Reyes and myself have earned positions of authority through decades of dedicated service?" Caleb's response was a racial slur that gasped through the room, captured clearly by every microphone and camera. His attorney closed his eyes in defeat. At that moment, the community center doors burst open as 3 officers in tactical gear entered, moving quickly toward the exit nearest to Caleb. David recognized them immediately as Thorne's closest allies in the department. "Stop those officers," he commanded. State police moved to intercept them, but not before one passed something to Caleb, who attempted to conceal it in his jacket. FBI agent Torres intercepted Caleb before he could reach the exit, discovering a thumb drive containing department files he had no authorization to possess. "Add evidence tampering and obstruction of justice to the list," Attorney General Pearson noted calmly. As state police escorted the 4 officers from the building, David Reyes stood and addressed the silent room. "Tonight marks a turning point for Luna Verde. The badge we wear represents a sacred trust with the community we serve. Officer Caleb Thorne has broken that trust repeatedly." He walked deliberately to where Caleb stood between 2 state troopers. "Caleb Thorne, you are hereby terminated from the Luna Verde Police Department, effective immediately." With ceremonial formality, David unpinned the badge from Caleb's chest, the metallic sound audible in the completely silent room. "Your actions have dishonored this badge and everything it stands for." The community center erupted in applause as Caleb was led away, his face a mask of hatred and defeat. When order was restored, Elias took the microphone one final time. "What happened to me at Vistancia Market was not unique. The difference was that I had the resources and position to fight back. Many victims of racial profiling and police misconduct do not. Tonight is not about revenge, but about restoration of justice and trust." He looked directly at the cameras broadcasting nationwide. Let Luna Verde become an example of how a community can confront its darkest truths and emerge stronger, more just, and truly committed to equal protection under the law for all its citizens. As the town hall concluded, David and Elias stood side by side, two childhood friends who had fulfilled their promise to change the world, beginning with their hometown. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in generations, the people of Luna Verde allowed themselves to hope for genuine transformation. 3 months after the town hall that shook Luna Verde to its foundations, Elias Vance stood before a newly graduated class of police cadets. Their eager faces turned toward him with rapt attention. "The badge you receive today is not a shield from accountability," he told them, his voice carrying through the community center that had hosted such dramatic revelations just 12 weeks earlier. "It is a symbol of the sacred trust between you and every citizen you encounter, regardless of their race background or circumstance." The transformation of Luna Verde had been swift and comprehensive. Caleb Thorne and 4 other officers now faced federal charges for civil rights violations, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. Former Chief Corrigan had been indicted for corruption and obstruction of justice. Mayor Thompson, implicated in the property scheme connected to the hate crimes, had resigned in disgrace, replaced by Sophia Rossi, the grocery store manager, whose courage had helped spark the entire reckoning. The Luna Verde Police Department, under David Reyes's continued leadership, had become an unexpected model for reform. With guidance from Elias and the FBI, David had implemented a comprehensive overhaul, new training protocols, focusing on de-escalation and implicit bias recognition, a strengthened civilian oversight committee with actual disciplinary authority, and recruitment efforts that had already increased diversity within the department by 30%. National police reform advocates pointed to what they now called the Luna Verde model as evidence that meaningful change was possible even in communities with deeply entrenched racial tensions. Elias had extended his stay in Luna Verde far beyond his original investigation, taking a temporary assignment with the FBI's Community Relations Division to help implement the reforms. His Phoenix condo stood empty while he stayed in David's guest room. The two friends, often working late into the night picking up conversations, started 3 decades earlier about justice and equality. After the ceremony, Elias met Lena for lunch at Vistancia Market's newly opened cafe section, a symbolic reclaiming of the space where he had faced Caleb Thorne's gun. "Dad, I got my law school acceptance letters," she announced, sliding 3 envelopes across the table. Harvard, Columbia, and Georgetown had all offered spots to the brilliant young woman whose work had been crucial to unraveling the conspiracy. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Elias beamed with paternal pride. "Your mother would be so proud." Lena took a sip of her coffee. "I've been thinking about specializing in civil rights law. Professor Williams says I could clerk for a federal judge after graduation, maybe even work for the Justice Department someday." Elias nodded, recognizing how profoundly the events of the past months had shaped his daughter's direction. "You'd make an excellent civil rights attorney. You've certainly had a unique education these past few months." "I also got another offer," she added, sliding a 4th envelope across the table. Inside was a letter from David Reyes, formally inviting Lena to join Luna Verde's newly formed Police Oversight Committee as a student representative during her law school breaks. "Chief Reyes says I have a valuable perspective as both a young Hispanic woman and someone familiar with proper police procedure." Elias smiled at his daughter's enthusiasm. Across town, David Reyes stood in his office, taking down his service commendations to make room for a new frame. The governor had personally presented him with the State Medal of Valor for his courage in confronting corruption within his own department, But this new addition meant more. It was a simple photograph from 1985, two boys on bicycles, one Hispanic and one white, grinning at the camera, with the innocent belief that they could change the world. Beside it, he placed a recent newspaper clipping showing the same two friends, now in their 50s, standing together at the police academy graduation. A knock at his door interrupted his nostalgia. Deputy Chief Martinez entered with a tablet displaying crime statistics. Complaints are down 60% since the reform's chief, and our recruitment class has the highest qualification scores in department history. David nodded with satisfaction. And the community survey results. 82% of residents say their trust in the department has improved. That's across all neighborhoods, all demographics. The changes extended beyond the police department. The city council, with several new members elected in a special recall vote, had established a reparations committee to address historical inequities in housing and business opportunities. The school board was revising curriculum to include accurate teaching of local civil rights history, including the recent events that had brought national attention to Luna Verde. Even the physical landscape was changing. The vacant lots where Hispanic-owned businesses had been burned in apparent hate crimes now featured construction sites for new enterprises financed through a special community development fund established with penalties from the corruption settlements. As evening approached, Elias made his way to David's house for their weekly dinner tradition. Elena had invited several new officers and their families, part of her husband's effort to build a departmental culture that extended beyond uniforms and badges into genuine community. On David's front porch, two rocking chairs held a commanding view of Agave Street. The friends settled into them with glasses of lemonade, watching as a patrol car drove past. The young officers inside, one white and one Hispanic, both newly graduated from the academy. Elias had addressed that morning, slowed their vehicle, and offered respectful salutes to the chief and the FBI agent, who had changed the course of their community. "Think we made a difference?" Davy Elias asked, using the childhood nickname few were privileged to use anymore. David gazed thoughtfully at the transformed street where they had once raced bicycles. "We kept our promise, not perfectly, not completely, but we moved things forward." He raised his glass in a silent toast to their shared journey. "The work continues, though always does." Elias nodded in agreement. "The next generation seems up to the challenge," he said, thinking of Lena and the eager faces of the new cadets. As twilight settled over Luna Verde, the two friends continued their conversation, just as they had as boys, just as they would continue to do in the years ahead. The badge that David had stripped from Caleb Thorne's chest now resided in a glass case in the police academy lobby, a permanent reminder of the cost of betraying public trust and the possibility of redemption and renewal, even in places where injustice had seemed insurmountable. What's your reaction to this story? Would you have had the courage to stand up against corruption in your community like Elias and David did? Comment below with your thoughts on how racial profiling impacts trust in law enforcement. If you believe that friendship and integrity can overcome decades of injustice, give this video a like. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about ordinary people fighting extraordinary battles against discrimination and corruption. Share this video with someone who needs to understand the real impact of racial bias in our systems. Thank you for joining us today. And remember, true justice requires both courage and accountability. This powerful story illuminates several profound truths about justice and society. First, systemic racism often hides in plain sight, protected by those who benefit from the status quo. Second, true change requires both insiders and outsiders working together. David's position within the system, combined with Elias's federal authority, created the leverage needed for transformation. Third courage is contagious. When Elias and David stood firm, others like Sophia Rossi and Jessica Moore found their own courage to speak truth to power. Fourth, accountability must be public and transparent to restore community trust after betrayal. Fifth, friendship can be a powerful foundation for justice work, providing the emotional sustenance needed for difficult confrontations. Perhaps most importantly, this story reminds us that no badge, title, or position places anyone above the law. Justice demands that we see each person's full humanity first, before any uniform or circumstance. The Luna Verde transformation shows that while the path to racial justice is difficult, communities can heal and rebuild when they honestly confront their darkest truths. What moments in this story resonated most with you? Have you ever witnessed or experienced racial profiling in your community? Comment below with your thoughts or personal experiences. If you believe in standing up against injustice wherever it appears, please hit that like button to help more people see this important story. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful narratives about overcoming discrimination and holding power accountable. Share this video with someone who needs to understand the real human impact of racial bias in our systems. Thank you for joining us in this conversation about justice, friendship, and courage in the face of corruption. Remember, real change begins when ordinary people refuse to accept injustice as inevitable.